what it is. A 1 degree complexity sale can take as little as 30 to 60 days. A 2 degree can take as much as 6 to 9 months. A 3rd degree complexity sale can take as much as 2 years to get the deal done. So if you're trying to build out a pro forma of what this new product will be, think about how complex the sale process is. Then I have this sales tool I call Ada. She's my friend, and she helps me sell lots of stuff. Okay? And that is how do I build awareness, interest, desire, and action for sales with a customer. And it starts with 3 emotions, or 3 things I want to have happen with the customer. The first thing is I have to think of what is it I want the customer to think. Because I need them to cognitively say, this is a good deal. And I want them to think before I want them to feel. So when I'm putting my sales deck together and putting the conversation I'm going to share, all the fact stuff comes early. Okay? I don't hit them with the facts in the end because people rarely buy based on facts. They buy based on emotion. So I stack up the facts in the front end. What is it I want them to think? The second step of selling is what is it I want them to feel. Because now if I can take those facts and wrap them in emotion, I'm more likely to get traction with this customer. Okay? The third step is what is it I want them to do. And if it's a step in the sales process, it may be to share data, or we sign an LOI, or something. Or whatever it is, always put in that order, what is it I want them to think, what is it I want them to feel, what is it I want them to do, and position your sales call in that order, and you'll find much more success than if you don't. Most people kind of spew a bunch of slides at the customer, and it mostly is features and benefits and price. Rarely is it done in how I want them to think, feel, and do. Now let's go to Ada. In the first step, all selling has to start with how does this customer become aware of it? And never forget, it's likely the best way for them to become aware is through a trusted referral source. So anybody they already know that says, hey, if you heard of this guy's company, you ought to take a look at it. That's the best way for them to become aware of you. Okay? So working your Rolodex and your board's Rolodex and all your friends' Rolodex, so everybody is doing as many introductions as possible. Even if they're 2 or 3 degrees separated, that's better than a cold call. Okay? And to me, every young company or every growing company needs 1 or 2 people just fully committed to doing massive amount of introductions. 10 a month is not enough. Okay? And I find lots of advisors who want to do 3 or 4, but that's crap. That's not going to get you anything. Okay? Because even a real good sales team gets 1 in 10. So 10 introductions might get you 1 deal. 100 introductions might get you 5 to 10. So you got to do massive amount of introductions. That takes a lot of work on an advisor's part, but a really good advisor is capable of that. So expect no less. Second is what I do to build interest. How do I get them focusing on I want to learn more? And it's matching pain and solution is what it is. What's their pain and what's your solution? The most powerful way to do this is when you're with them, have them describe their frustrating points and match up what you're offering around those points of frustration. Often that's the easiest place to begin. It's often not where you want to begin the relationship, it's often the easiest place to begin. My breakthrough moment came with their physics, which was an ortho rehab business. And I was down in Dallas at Texas Instruments back then. They used to be a big company. Funny how the world changes. And I was all prepared to talk about orthopedic stuff. And T.I. said, you know, we just finished reading an article about bundle case rate for elective orthopedics. We're looking for somebody who's willing to try that with us. And wouldn't you know, I was able to deliver a sales call around bundle payments. Now, I'm the CEO, I could do that. That's called walking on air. You get on the plane and think, okay, now I got to figure out how to do a bundle payment. But by asking them their pain first and then talking through what we were going to do, we turned that into about a $4 million customer. And that's when the company went from about $3 million of revenue to $50 million of revenue over the next 6 months. because we hit on something. They were an opinion leader in the space. The minute they said yes, 10 other big employers said yes. All the health plans that were serving them were like, well, we want you to do that through us. I mean, I've been calling you for 2 years, and you said no. Well, if our big customers are going to do it, we want to do it now. Funny how that works, okay? So listen for the pain in the conversation as you think about your solutions. And then you create the desire. It's like fire, and it can be stoked by lots of great methods, like the scarcity principle, or having other people that they want to be like. And then finally, getting to the deal. Now let's look at what that looks like. Here's how I think of the sales funnel. The very top is marketing. And marketing and sales are cousins on a team. And in fact, after I started full-time, I just put them all on the same team. There wasn't a separate marketing and sales department. All one thing. Why? Because marketing has to do the awareness, interest part. Sales has to do the desire and action part. And I didn't need us marketing out there for the purpose of general marketing if it wouldn't produce a lead. So we put them together. Along the side here, the think and the feel and the do, never forget that. And in desire, you get them to want your product. Now I'll get to your question that came up earlier. I've provided you several tools here for customer identification. Always remember that the core customer and the core user may be different. So think about that in the sales process. And then there's secondaries. Who are they? What are they trying to do? What do they value? What frustrates them? Answering those questions, you usually figure out what's the storyline I go in with to get the deal. The value proposition. Yeah.
Just a quick question on
Yeah.
the last slide. Oftentimes I find myself talking to the core user and trying to get to the customer who's actually going to write the check.
Mhm.
But that core user ends up trying to get in the way, right? Because they don't want their boss to act as a gatekeeper in some ways, right?
Uh-huh.
How do you ever feel comfortable just circumventing the end user and going directly to the customer?
I've done that on occasion when I was absolutely sure it was a roadblock, and the person above them perceived they were a bit of a roadblock too.
So you'd already met the person over. Like they knew.
Yeah. But if I didn't know the person above them, I probably wouldn't go there. I'd probably get a leg blown off. Okay? Now, if I know the person above them, I could. But let me suggest to you something you might try. If a user group really likes what you're doing, and let's say you got more than one user that likes you, let's say you got 4 or 5, what you can do is elicit their input for a white paper, an article you're going to put together, give them and their company and their boss the opportunity to be part owner because they see a problem. They may not be buying anything from you now, but you're just gathering research for your problem. And often putting their boss or their boss's boss in the spotlight of opportunity will cause them to shake loose. That's how I ended up getting Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina's business. The Blues have a Best of Blue conference every year, and everybody comes to brag on their cool thing. And they're the largest processor of Medicare claims in the nation. And I just couldn't get through to the next layer. So we did a little white paper that we presented Best of Blue of why a product we created, Paradigm, was so revolutionary in Medicare and pre-Medicare space because of the comorbid conditions. Because if you look, that population has more combinations of CAD, CHF, other things, and those high comorbid chronics are the most costly group a health plan has. We showed them the data, we did the research, we said we're presenting it as the Best of Blue. We've been using some of your data and other Blues. You're the largest provider and processor of Medicare. It'd be a real honor if you wanted to share the podium with us to produce the results. Now, they weren't even yet a customer, but when they got up in front of all their colleagues at Best of Blue, you know, all the switches flipped in their head, and within a few months they were a customer of that product. So that's a very interesting way to go get a customer, okay? Because you got to let them feel that they're part of the solution. And I always try to give our customers as much of that ownership of that as possible. You know, put them up for the award you might be up for. You know, say this would only happen with this customer. Let's nominate them for the award. The minute your customer's up on a podium bragging about you, it's nirvana. Okay, that's more powerful than you can ever brag about yourself. All right. A couple more tools. All these last pictures are tools that you can use if you see fit. Here's ways I think about a value proposition. I'm trying to write a value proposition. Start with who's paying for this, and then who's going to be using it. They're usually different. All right? Once I know that, what's the customer trying to get accomplished? What does your product or service do to help them get that accomplished? And what's the so what? What's the who cares? Okay? You can't answer the who cares, you better start over because your features are only important to you, not your customer. I just threw in a little example here, a little SaaS thing called Cash Manager, just to give you a way to think about the words. But that really helps me frame value propositions because often you'll read one and you're like, well, that sounds really nice. I wonder if anybody cares. You know, they only care if they buy. Another really good tool for sales teams is the stakeholder map, particularly if you go into a new customer that you've not been in before, and figure out, you know, who is the decision maker here, who's holding the money, who's got the influence, where's the love. And I often do this with people inside an organization around an issue, because the stakeholder map gives me a sense of who is the biggest influencer of the group. Often there's an opinion leader, and often it's not by their title. It's by their tenure or something else they've done there. Be sure to validate your assumptions about your sales process, things you've got to know, you should know, and your nice to knows. I use a tool called Salesforce to do this, and as we developed profiles of customers, we had our nice must knows, should knows, and nice to know questions about them. Part of our quest was to get as much information as possible, which leads you to really refining the model of what you're going to compete with and offer something to them. ADA across the bottom, awareness, interest, desire, and action, drives them this process of who, what are their needs, what's your priority to them, what will they likely want to know, and gives me a sense of what the sales cycle is going to be for this customer base. Two last big things, because I'm running out of time here. The power map is really good for you to use as a CEO if you're selling into a plan like a Blue or an HCA or Community Health or something like that, a big organization. There's sort of 4 defining boxes of each person. So what I do is I try to draw the org chart, the top end of the org chart. And then I try to figure out, okay, what's their buying role? Are they an approver, a decision maker, evaluator, or user? That's the first box. The second box, your adaptability to change. Are they an innovator? They love new stuff? Are they visionary? They got big ideas, but they're maybe not the innovator. Are they the pragmatist? Are they conservative? Or are they the laggard? Because if you know they're the laggard, you know you talk to them last. Okay? Because you talk to them first, they go tell everybody you don't listen to this guy. Status. Are they a mentor, meaning they're really shepherding you through the organization? Are they a supporter? Do they get a positive sign? Are they neutral? Are they slightly negative? Are they your enemy? I mean, they want their friend, not you, to get the deal. And then, how much coverage do you have? You have no contact, brief contact, you have multiple contacts, you have really in-depth contact with that person. It really gets you insight as the leader of your company to how well you know your customer. Okay? And I use this on every customer I have, and on those Monday sales calls, it lets me know what do we need to do next if we're really going to get inside this organization. To say, gosh, I called them last week, and here's where they are, and here's where they say the decision is, that's crap. You're going to get nowhere with that one on the call. It's better to say, how do we get a meeting that's going to engage the CEO? Or who is the visionary on this team? And once we know who the visionary is, let's go for it. Well, this head of marketing is an innovator. What can we do to get them excited? This HR person is my laggard. Are they doing anything damaging to us? What's going on there? How do we get them warmed up a little bit? Okay? That really helps move momentum with a customer in ways that you can't even imagine. So use that with your sales team. You'll find it incredibly effective. Now the last thing is I'll go back to your first question. That is, what are the steps? You'll have to decide for yourself what they are for your business. But the time we sold Paradigm, this is what I'd come up with. And for those of you who are, as Jim said, building a company to sell, the reason this is valuable is that you can predict what your pipeline will convert at. You can get paid for that, even though it's in escrow. And if you stick around a year or two to shepherd it through and make damn sure it happens, it's a whole lot of fun on a payday when extra checks come in after the deal's closed because you converted the pipeline. So not only is it powerful for you to be able to predict quarter to quarter for your board how you're going to do and do an annual budget, at exit, everything in the pipe is worth something if you have any predictability around it. If you don't have predictability, it ain't worth nothing, right? So never forget that. We got really lucky. We sold Paradigm for about $400 million. We got $50 million for the pipeline, and the buyer paid out 42 of the 50. So we end up getting 442 for the company. But if I hadn't had predictability, I've only gotten the 400. Okay? So the prospect pool is zero probability. That means, oh goody, we're talking to. Okay? When I had an on-site meeting with my team and their team, we gave it a 10% probability. It was in a big blue plan for everybody to come together. It's interesting enough, but it's really, really weak. After the on-site, if I was getting data, I moved it up to a 20% probability. Because now they're having to give me something. And once we presented a proposal and the conversation continued, I could move it up more. The minute we went into anything where we started trading legal documents, it gets higher. Why? Because people want to spend the money doing legal. When I get a signed contract, I'm as high as 90. But I've learned over the years, even a signed contract, don't start counting the money yet. You start counting the money when the first check comes in and it clears the bank, now you got a customer. All right? And implementation can go really squirrely. So make sure you got a really good person implementing. And that's probably my final point before I take any other questions, is that once you land a customer, the speed and ease at which you make this turn on for them is the most powerful thing you can do to delight them. Because they won't remember those initial sales calls, but they sure as heck will remember how hard or easy this was to turn on. And if you make it ridiculously easy, they're going to start coming to you with future problems because you were so easy to work with. And that's the first thing they'll tell everybody else when they introduce you. Because the next prospect will say, well, tell me, Blue Shield of California, why did you choose to work with Michael and Paradigm? Oh my God, they made that so easy with CalPERS. And we've done 3 other things with them, and it's just easy. He sends 2 or 3 people, and he embeds them with us till we get it right. Okay, I manage it. Right? So don't forget that that last mile is the most important. Easy implementation with a customer will win you landslide referrals, and that's how you really incrementally grow. Anyway, that's what I got. Let's see if you got questions for me or anything. Yes?
How do you prevent the fallout from the contract negotiation stage to the implementation? That 30%, how do you reduce that or any best practices?
Well, I have found to decide what you're willing to fall on your sword over, and be really careful how you use attorneys, because when the meter's running, they'll find 50,000 things to redline, and if you got too much red ink on the deal, you're going to scare away your customer. I was always, at Paradigm, we had our own template, but we were happy to use a customer's template. And we had sort of 10 defining values that had to be in the deal. And we described them as 10 defining values, not points of contention. This has to be collaborative. We have to both be able to win in this. This has to serve the patient. Things that you would think, well, gosh, everybody would want to agree to that. But then when we would get a clause that was a stinger, we'd say, well, that conflicts with 2 of the defining values. What middle ground can we find that represents the spirit of the agreement? We're willing to compromise what we want the language to be as long as it hits the values. And I found using that kind of approach neutralized a lot of I win and you lose, or you win and I lose stuff. Drove attorneys insane. So I finally just got in-house counsel because I could never get an outside party to appreciate what I was trying to do. At the end of the day, if I win the skirmish and I don't get the deal, that doesn't help. All right? So I use sort of 10 defining values, and I'd introduce those even ahead of the contract. And the way the conversation is starting would be like, we have documents, if you want to use our documents. You're a big health plan, you probably have some too. But before you even go there, here's 10 defining values of how we do business. Let's make sure we resonate on those. And if we do, I am certain we can work it out. And I would do that at the highest level I possibly could. And there are things that virtually nobody would say no to. So by getting that, we would sign off on just the values of the relationship. And then we would nice get our people working on the contract. It became a really beautiful way to speed that up.
So would some of those be like communication, like you value direct
Right,
communication?
but say it explicit enough that you know when it's been violated. Okay? Say it explicit enough that you know when it's been violated. And think about it in what are the typical zingers you find in contracts. Okay?
When he asked that question, I think a lot of young companies think if you go into a meeting, the initial meeting, and there's a lot of people there, that's good. And I've always found that's terrible.
It's terrible.
Because if you go in a meeting and there's 10 to 15 there, and by the way, you go to the second meeting and it's 10 to 15 new people, you can just put on them. Because it's they're just covering the
Committees kill deals. And anytime, after 5 or 6 people, every incremental person in the room is moving closer to this and never going to happen. It just is, because somebody has to shepherd this through, and you're never going to get consensus of that many people in the room. Okay? And so if you got 10 or 15 people in the room, they're doing one of two things. They're going to kill you by committee, or they're just going to learn everything they can so they do it themselves. They're probably not going to do it.
Michael, what is your view on, for software as a service companies, caving on a commitment to a long-term contract and going on faith and trust that if you do that as any time, because if we're not performing for you, you don't want to do business with us? Because you have competitors, you walk into situations and you'll find out we hate our current client or vendor, we can't leave for another year under our contract. And our response is, well, you wouldn't have that option with us, you might have to let it leave. But we're giving up a defined term under contract. So how do you balance that?
I usually balance long-term opportunity with exclusivity around something. So we were constantly iterating something new, and every time there was something new, if you were going to use it, it meant I gave you a window of time that was primarily yours, but I expected a window of time that you were my customer. Otherwise, almost all of our contracts were 90-day outs. Because I had the same philosophy. I don't want you to do business with me to pay me. I mean, that destroys your team. And for large blue plans, for some reason it gave them comfort, but they almost never exercised that clause. They gave them enormous comfort. They could get out of the deal.
There's a carrot and stick method also. So what I like to do is build a loyalty, maybe rebate or some type of incentive that they stick through the term of the agreement. That you've got something there. So there's an incentive before the other side of the stick. A lot of companies use and say, hey, if you leave, then there's a penalty. You got to call back some of the value that you've done.
But if you do the rebate, like you said, stick it at the very end.
Yes.
If it's a 36-month deal, it pays out at month 38 after you've trued up all the money at month 36. That way, you don't pay out even at month 36. When you get your last check, it clears, everybody's happy, then you give them the rebate. Okay? And you can also position that as a down payment on the next product. Rebate.
Can you say something about sales compensation strategy? I mean, I've had a philosophy that says early sales are way more important to me than later sales, so I'm totally happy to pay, almost like overpay commissions early and then change that later. And what can you say about sales compensation?
Well, the number one thing I can say is it's tricky, and there's no formula to work for all of them. That's the two things I have learned the hard way. So you have 3 or 4 tools that you can use. One is the base. The base to me always fluctuates with what you want your incentive pay to be. Higher base, smaller incentive. Lower base, higher incentive. Okay? And I want people to feel that, because ultimately, I try to design companies with the low base, high commission wins. But I need people thinking entrepreneurially in sales. Quite often they'll come in first year at a higher base and then they want the other. The second thing is to remember that use bonus short-term bonus for the things you want short-term rather than constantly changing the commission structure. Because you lose credibility every time you change it. And the sales team starts sandbagging on you or really just thinks year to year. And they look for the next new opportunity to go somewhere else. That's why so many companies have such high turnover. They change their commission structure almost every year, trying to find their way. So if I'm a young company and I'm wanting some early pops, I'll provide bonuses. It says, hey, in the next 30 days, everybody that closes a deal worth more than X gets X dollars. That way it has a defined beginning, an end, a number, you hit it or you didn't. You either closed it or you didn't. That way I'm not playing the commission story and then changing commission. I also find people love perks. So instead of money, giving away a trip is really cool, and making sure the spouse knows there's a trip on the line, pushes their butt out of the house to do sales. I'm very serious. I know that sounds really kitschy, but we do a trip for Hawaii for two weeks, and I notify all the spouses and say this is the next 6 months, and whoever sells the most gets it. So one of these 5 are going to get it. You got a 1 in 5 shot. Like, what the hell are you doing at home tonight? But you gotta understand, part of the psyche of a salesperson is they already feel this enormous sense of guilt. If their whole family's bought into what they're trying to do, what you're trying to do, it changes the game entirely. So don't forget that there's other people affected by that salesperson, and there's other incentives beyond commission and pay that may be even more influential to them. Recognizing them with their family and friends is one of the most powerful things I've ever done for salespeople. And then, if there's big conferences or trade shows or anything like that, giving them the opportunity to speak or get some notoriety instead of you, the CEO, always doing it, is another way to build incredible loyalty and support your sales team, and you build them to have a sense of authority, which means your customers want to meet with them instead of you. And that's a good thing to do, because as you grow, you can't go meet with every customer. You want customers to be really happy that your head of business development is there. I also tended to call my head of sales business development, not sales. So I add acquisition and sales and marketing all together, and account management, we call that business development. Because it just creates a much more professional organization, and we can talk to the customer about virtually anything. Okay, does that help? Anything else?
Any suggestions going after the competitor with 75% market share? There's a lot of pre-established relationships with the upper level folks.
That was my problem with their visits. Now, I started right here in Maryland Farms, and the building, OrthoLink was there with me too. They were on one side of the hall, and I was on the other side. You guys were there. But their visits was orthopedics and rehab. I had this competitor down in Birmingham that would kick my ass wood for health center. So they were the enemy. So 3 things really helped me there. The first is I started hiring away as much of their admin support as possible. I was able to hire the executive secretary away to become my admin front desk person. I paid a fortune for this woman and gave her warrants and options. But her only job was to call all the customers and talk about how happy she was to be at their visits. Okay? And it was amazing how much shit she created for that poor company. Because she was up to here with it. She wasn't treated very well, and I treated her like royalty. And she was in her mid-50s, and when we sold, she made a couple $1 million. And it was so worth it to me, because we probably got $50 million worth of business off of her. Okay? So, be smart about how you go about it. The second thing is that at the time, Mr. Squishy would always brag about the fact he was #1 in his markets. So we would help in on finding a market that we would take his position. And so we invested, instead of a mile wide in an SD, we invested heavily in Denver. And that's the market we went after. And at the time, J.C. Bradford here, the statesman, but J.C. Bradford was following Health South. And so was this company called Robertson Stevenson. They're not around anymore. Cheryl Skolnick was head of analyst there. Some of you know Cheryl. Big, like bad bitch from Wizard Lot, she college. And she was overall analyst. And then Catherine Giamato Smith and Andy were at J.C. Bradford. So the minute I knew I had the #1 share in Denver, and the way we went about it, Health South would go buy your rehab clinic, put their name over the door, and you were another cookie cutter. So what we did is we went to the insurers, offered them a 20% cut in their rehab costs and a freeze for 3 years if they gave me all the business. I built an IPA, went after my 25 top performers. Health South had like 12 locations, 13 locations. Went after our top performers, and 23 joined me. I bought 51% of their business. They kept 49. Gave half cash, half stocks. It really cost me only 25% of their book value buying. GE funded it for me, and overnight we went to like 20-something locations. The minute that happened, the first 2 calls I made was to Cheryl Skolnick and the folks at J.C. Bradford. I said, you're on the call with Health South next month for the quarterlies at the end. Do me a favor and ask them why they're no longer #1 in Denver. And ask them where that's going to happen to them next. Talk about poking the bear. Oh my God. But we went from nobody knew who the hell we were here in Maryland Farms to everybody knew who the hell we were. And you got to be ready for that. But I was ready for GE had committed up to $50 million if I needed it. We were trying to do the same thing in Dallas, Fort Worth for them. And at that point, we had all kind of offers to sell. And we paid GE 7 times their money in 6 months. On a deal. Now, we were getting ready, we were ready to sell. But boy, that ended up. So that's how important you can have. Be ready for the crazy that comes with it. There's a lot of crazy that comes with that too. Over a year somewhere, I'll tell you some crazy.
What about the pre-existing relationships that you've had for the past 10 to 15 years? You guys coming into the organization, trying to make an impact.
With their customers, you mean?
So say, for example, a hospital.
Okay.
They're using a particular software product. We're coming in as a competitor, better product, more agile. They have a pre-established relationship from the CEO down. We've been their customer for the past 15 years. New guy walking into the hospital trying to sell them a better application.
Okay, so you got 3 or 4 dimensions you're gonna have to play with. This would be an hour discussion. I'm trying to answer you in 2 minutes. So the first thing you gotta ask yourself is, okay, if I'm going in there, can I convince them that the pain to switch to me is less than the pain to keep doing what they're doing? The switching cost is always #1 in mind. And we we don't typically think that way, but every customer, when you leave the room, is like, yeah, they're good, but boy, that'd be a lot of hassle to switch. So you gotta show that the switching cost to you and the pain around that is really low. And they won't even feel it. So that's one thing you gotta work through in your head is that how do I have to feel that? The second is align your product with some big initiative they're struggling with. If they're a hospital right now, they're probably trying to figure out if they bought doctors, how they're gonna make them profitable. If they haven't, how are they gonna shorten the relationship with the competitor to buy the doctor? How are they gonna start dealing with consumers directly? And how might they avoid the readmission penalties they have with people that leave? Does your product help with any of those pain points? And sell that as the primary differentiating feature. It may be that component of your product is what you sell first. Because it will create an aggravation of the existing product that they start seeing other flaws in it. Because the minute you got the baby in your arms, even if it's ugly, you say it's pretty, ask any parent. You say, oh, look at my pretty baby, and my child's got a wart on his nose, it's ugly as hell. But it's theirs. And so my feeling has always been that hospital or health plan executives, once they've bought in, you don't want to admit that you got something kind of ugly. Okay? You want that to slowly come to everybody's knowledge that there's just something better. So often selling one of your features into them so that you start chipping away at that feeling of that is a better way to go. So I'll often lead with one segment of the product. The third is try to start building consensus around the leader that they need to change. Because the leader will likely change if the whole team is saying this isn't working very well, there's something better out here. A leader who has a product that's been in a long time and all the team's reasonably happy with it, the thing you gotta remember is they're probably not sitting there thinking, I love this and I hate yours. They're thinking, I got a laundry list of crap I gotta deal with today. And yeah, he's probably got a better product, but when I get these 28 things done, I'll get to it. those 20 things never get done, so they never get to you. But if you build consensus of the people around them, you make this an easy decision, and somebody around us says, I'll lead it if you just let us change it, most of the time the leader will let the change happen, because they're not having to lead, and they can stay focused on the problem list. Okay? I don't know if that's helpful. Those are the things
No, that was very appreciative. Thank you.
that works for me. Thank you all very much. I enjoyed the